On today's show, we'll be discussing The Mandalorian Chapter 4. Full spoilers ahead.
Sanctuary.
Sanctuary. The dog? No.
I thought she was going to join us.
I thought she was going to join us again. She might later. The dog, Cooper. You may have seen her last week. So, yeah, we're here to discuss. This is Star Wars for Breakfast. I'm Brian. I'm here with Spencer. And
Cooper's eating breakfast.
The dog is eating. So, yeah, we will be discussing The Mandalorian Chapter 4 titled Sanctuary today. And the dog's running around. Very excited. So we're just going to jump into it. Actually, yeah, before we jump into it, you texted me. You had seen the episode before I saw it. And you texted me that you thought it was the weaker of the 4 episodes so far.
I did. Rewatching it, I feel less so.
Okay.
Because there's a couple parts that I didn't catch. I don't know if I walked in the other room to pee or I don't know. But there's a couple of things that I had missed that I felt made the episode feel rushed. But I still feel that it was a little unexplained, but a couple of the pieces were explained better than I had originally thought.
And I do have some points we'll talk about later as far as pacing or just the structure of the show. Not necessarily negative, but definitely I see what they're doing. You know what? Screw it. Let's go into it now. Why not? So rules. By the end of the episode, I was like, you know what? It's very much a Western in the vein of something like Gunsmoke, an old Western series. And yet there's a lot of that Saturday morning cartoon vibe. And so it's sort of a combination of the two. And the way the storytelling is each episode in many ways can stand on its own. You sort of have the villain of the week. You have the I don't know if you friend or, he makes a friend or, at least encounters somebody that each week.
I don't disagree. I think that there's, similar to all those shows or even procedural dramas, there's like an overarching story, but each episode is its own story. And then, just like this episode, there's a little thing at the beginning that tied in, then it's the whole episode, and then like the last minute and a half
literally, yeah,
tied it in. So like, if you cut those 2 minutes off, it'd be almost a story by itself.
It's felt, just a short story. I mean, it's a very cliched story. We've seen it a million times. We're going to be jumping around, and as I said earlier, full spoilers, but basically it's the whole farmers that don't know how to fight or need help. You come in, you teach them how to fight, and then you fight the big bad. That was the story. We've seen it a million times. It was done well, but
I think
it's a story we've seen done so many times.
I feel like with this episode, it was weird because we've given a lot of Western type vibes, but this one felt more fantasy-ish. Because you're talking about like the training the people that don't know how to fight. A lot of that happens less in Westerns and more in Robin Hood or medieval type fantasies. Whereas in Westerns, they're not teaching a bunch of people how to shoot. So I felt like it was pulling from all of the source materials, because Star Wars is a space fantasy.
Yeah.
So it kind of pulled in some of those aspects where it was still staying true to a lot of the Western vibes. Like the whole wagon scenes.
Yeah, what you pointed out to me.
They were getting pulled around, but it felt like they were in the back of a wagon. And even the end, when they were leaving, felt like the back of a wagon. So there's a lot of Western type tropes in it, but I felt the action parts were more fantasy as opposed to Western. This time around.
They're doing a really good job with the Baby Yoda character, which is what I'm still calling it. I wonder if he'll give it a name. I sort of hope he does at some point, but
What do you call it?
Wampa Rat or
Yeah,
something.
baby Wampa Rat.
But the puppetry is really good. The scenes with Baby Yoda are funny. The whole clicking the switches at the beginning.
Well, my favorite part of that is when he was like looking at him and like.
Yeah, it's something that you know. Even going back to the first episode, you could sit back and say, "Oh, yeah, this might get corny here," but I think they're doing a good job with the character.
I think they're limiting it, so like it's not overboard. It's not done throughout the whole episode. There's a couple pieces at the beginning and a couple pieces at the end, or it was like that kid kind of slapsticky humor, but it was in small doses as opposed to being the focus.
Yeah,
which helps it not get tiresome.
Exactly. I keep trying to determine if there's any CG with the character. I guess when it's walking, but even
that could be marionette.
It could be. Obviously, like at the end, like I said, we're jumping through the episode. We assume you've seen it, or you don't care to watch it, and you just want to hear us talk about it. Towards the end, when the little girl hugs Baby Yoda, clearly a puppet. Like there's even physical contact. Him on the ship, puppet. Him riding on the thing, a puppet.
In the bar, tavern, whatever they're calling it.
The bar thing. Oh, when he's on the little...
The stool. Like everybody else is in these separate kind of stools, but the one he sits on is made for somebody to be able to puppet. So I think a lot of that, I like it better. I mean, to me, it'll hold the test of time as it goes from 4K to 8K to 36K. Well, I mean, I don't know where it's going, but eventually it's going to look like better than someone standing in front of you doing it. It's going to be higher def than that. But that will help it hold up, because you look at like the prequels, episode 1, 2, and 3 are awful. Like trying to watch them now, even in high definition, they look like shit. Like it's really bad. The parts that they added to the 4, 5, and 6 now in high def don't look great.
I'll tell you
the
what,
little CG adding parts, but
and
this
Clone Wars, Attack of the Clones, the ending sequence at the factory, where they're running through the factory, it's just like a cartoon. I mean, the entire sequence.
But this, I mean, yes, technology is a lot better, and I'm sure that, but J.J. Abrams talked about doing more practical sets. Like you can tell that it's more set work as opposed to CG work, and I think will stand up better to the test of time.
We're introduced to a character, and I don't even know if they named her in this.
Gina.
Gina Carano, the MMA fighter and actress, is in this episode.
I think she's just actress now. She ain't fighting no more.
True, true. I think she's officially said I don't think she'd ever go back. I think she's been asked. But in this episode, she is an shock trooper for the Empire. She basically, obviously the Empire fell, so she's no longer a part of that, but she still has that skill set. She was an elite trooper. She references Endor, which was interesting. She assists the Mandalorian, and she does a lot of cool fights, actually. Their first introduction to each other is just a fight sequence where she's doing a bunch of crazy moves on them.
But I think introducing the fact that she talked about being on Endor before sets up the ending where they're fighting an egg.
Yes. We'll get to that. Yes, absolutely.
So I think that's a good prelude to that, because how else would she have any reference point to that? But I think a lot of her fight scenes were good, and there's already some memes about it, like when they rolled up together, Yoda standing there like staring at him, walking in on Mom and Dad. Yeah. But I think that the fight scenes felt well choreographed. They felt slower and less quick cutty. But to me, that's good. It makes it feel more real as opposed to
her using body weight and flipping him and doing all that kind of stuff is really cool. The fact that it was going back and forth, he's punching her with all of his strength, and that she's taking it.
And I mentioned it while we were watching it. It is a good reference to me once again that how he intentionally didn't kill Chubbs, the guild leader, because he's able to flip a switch on his helmet and see everything.
Yeah.
Same thing when it's like smoky in the back of his ship. He's able to see where Chubbs is because he can turn his helmet on, so he knows exactly where to shoot, what to. So I think that, to me, once again, showing what all his helmet can do proves to me that he meant to not kill him.
You think she'll be back? I hope she kind of pops back in.
I think so, because I think that any kind of whatever they're building to at the end, whether it's the Imperial, him fighting against Chubbs in the guild, like, I don't know, because there's still people, you know, at the end, there's still people looking for him. So whether or not he's looking to fight the Imperial guy or Chubbs in the guild, I think that each episode when he makes this friend is going to be part of his little army to fight whoever it is he's fighting at the end.
So we encountered these shrimp farmers, basically the little blue shrimp things, and they have no ability to fight or defend themselves. They're basically attacked by orcs, and they steal all their shrimp. I don't know, steal all their stuff.
They want to dye their clothes blue.
I guess, yeah. So they need help from Gina Carano and the Mandalorian. We introduced sort of a love interest, which it's fine, but it didn't have any time to really develop.
Well, and that's when I was talking about felt like one of the most rushed episodes. That was part of the
That whole
reason.
storyline felt rushed.
But I also think that they didn't force it either. So like they laid tidbits, like you knew that she was interested in him. Even Gina Carano was talking about, you know, why don't you settle down with this?
I just wish there was a scene where, I mean, there was sort of the scene where she's asking him about, you know, his helmet, and he tells her about his childhood, but there really wasn't
bonding.
But yeah, there needed to be more of her talking about her life, and you know what I mean? Like, I think you needed a little bit more.
But to me, that
but you didn't have time unless
No.
you were going to do a 50. You know, the episode came in at about 34 minutes. You needed about a 50-minute episode if you were going to expand on.
Well, I think that goes back to the Western thing. It's, you know, or even, we're talking about fantasies, that white knight, that knight in shining armor that comes in, and that was really loud, I'm sure, because she was right next to the camera. But, you know, you go back to the guy comes in and saves the day. He comes in and saves the day, and then the woman falls in love with him. So I think that's kind of what they were playing at a little bit. And this one was directed by Bryce Dallas Howard.
Yeah,
so
I know she's wanting to follow her father's famous director, and she's wanting to get in. She did a great job. I thought the episode was well directed. Even the action sequences were really. I mean, think about it, the fighting and all that. She did good. She doesn't. I'd have to look. I don't think she's done any films, but I could be wrong.
Thanks,
Yeah, well,
Right.
So we had the shrimp farmers. Another thing I really enjoyed about this episode was similar to last week when we were getting those flashbacks with the droids. They made the droids from the prequels look menacing and scary, where they were sort of goofy and a joke in those films. You take the ATST, which is sort of a joke, the Ewoks destroyed them. I mean, you look in Return of the Jedi, that whole battle sequence. ATSTs were looked at as inferior.
She's done a couple things, but not a lot. She's only directed like a
Features?
couple. No, they're like
short?
mini-series and
Okay.
shorts. That's
Okay.
her first like.
So she's getting into.
She did a TV movie and a couple short things.
Okay, cool. So yeah, she's getting into directing. But
yeah,
the ATST in this is scary. I like the red lighting. It's almost like the eyes. It's like this giant monster that they're battling. This series, if anything, is taking stuff that should be scary and should be menacing and making it that.
Well,
Sort of like how Darth Vader in Rogue One is
Yes.
made that true force of nature, that nightmarish
well, it goes back to
character.
and we've talked about it. They don't. There's lore, even in 4, 5, and 6. It's you're supposed to be scared of all these things, but you don't know why. So then you go back to the prequels, and it made you even less scared of all these things that you didn't know why. And I think Force Awakens kind of did a good job of reining that back in, but even more so with, like you said, Rogue One. There's a couple of these other side movies, and even this show has done a great job of kind of, I don't know, making things that you were supposed to be scared of or supposed to be, intimidated by, are more intimidating now as opposed to before.
So we also learn about I guess the rules. You know, each episode we've been getting a little bit more on the Mandalorians and how they operate. So we basically are told he can take his helmet off if no one is around. But if anyone is in his presence, he cannot remove the helmet, because if they see his face, he can no longer put the helmet on.
Well, it makes sense, because there's that giant Mandalorian, I call them Mando 5s.
He's trying to take his helmet off.
Well, and he's also huge. So how else is he eating? Like, he doesn't have a big dude. He's a big dude. So,
but very it was reminding me of, as a wrestling, I enjoy wrestling. The luchador, to take off to take off a luchador's mask is the ultimate disrespect and dishonoring, and it's rarely done. It is done on occasion. I think some companies do it a little too often, or try to work that into a storyline, but it's similar. Like if he takes his helmet off and somebody sees his face, it's something, I guess, disrespect or on. I'm curious to what can he still chill with the other Mandalorians just without his helmet? They don't go into that.
I don't know that. I know that, like we were talking about, the amount of things that his helmet does.
Oh yeah, it serves as
even if he's allowed to be still in it, that would serve as a huge disadvantage.
Can he? Because Jango Fett, everybody knew what he looked like, but then again, he was his own thing. Like, he was repping Mandalorian stuff, but he was his own. He didn't care, basically. And I think the EU expanded on that. Whether that's canon or not, I don't know. I'm tired of tracking what's canon and what's not canon. But yeah, I'm curious if that's going to go any further, and are we going to get to a point this season where he does take the helmet off? I sort of hope not. We were discussing how he's similar to Judge Dredd, where he never takes his helmet off.
And I know that Judge Dredd is based off a comic book, so I don't know the comic well enough to say whether or not.
I don't believe he does.
Yeah, I don't think he does, because even in the beginning of the Keith Urban, that's a country singer, Carl Urban. Even he mentions it. He's like, I think the girl asked him, and he's like, no, I never take it off.
I would, if you're going to build to a storyline where the Mandalorian removes his helmet, I think that should be like a season 3 thing. I think that you can build to that, but if he automatically just takes it off this season and I don't know. I mean, we'll see if they do that, but I think there's an interesting story that can be told. So the final battle was basically the Battle of Endor, but condensed.
Yeah,
into a short, small area. You trained all these people how to use sticks. It reminded me of the Ewoks. They take down an AT-ST.
It reminded me of Robin Hood.
Kevin
Costner, Robin Hood.
That too. Well done sequence. The battle was really cool. Gina Carano was really cool in this scene. It was done very well, actually. For an action sequence, to be such a small area, it all took place in a very short area.
Well, it showed, and to me that goes back to the building the relationship part, because I felt when I watched it the first time that the whole relationship between the Widow and the Mandalorian felt very rushed, but it showed them getting better after training. That didn't all happen in one day. That happened over a period of time. And then at the end of that, they talked about, well, we've been here for a couple of weeks. So to me, it makes more sense now, and it feels a little less rushed, their relationship. But similar to like Game of Thrones, it still wasn't explained. Like, there was no tidbits showing that there was a relationship forming. It explains how it could have happened because it gave a longer period of time, but it still didn't show any tidbits of that.
After the battle, my only beef with the battle is that we didn't see anybody really die as far as the villagers.
I was going to say, I saw it. They showed, stuff blowing up. They showed several of the orc creatures dying because they got stabbed.
But it's like, it's like you had such a small amount of time. You couldn't. In other words, you couldn't have one of the main guys sacrifice himself in the battle. You didn't have enough time to tell that story. It was a very cartoon, almost condensed version of a story. And then, of course, Mandalorian at the end's like, I'm gonna leave Baby Yoda here, and then a bounty hunter shows up. Gina Carano kills him, and then Mandalorian's like, well, I guess I have to keep him forever. That's how it ends.
Keep running.
Keep running, yeah, exactly. There's only 4 more episodes, I believe, where this was episode 4. There are 8 total. The next 4 weeks. It'll be every Friday with the exception of Star Wars week. It'll drop on that Wednesday. Final thoughts on this episode?
I think that they're building towards the Imperial guy being the main bad guy, because I feel like
it makes sense.
Well, Chubbs feels like a Lando.
So,
like
yeah, somebody's paying for the bounty, and it's that guy. So.
Yeah, so I don't know where they're going to go from there. But this episode itself, upon watching it a second time, I felt like it was less rushed. But, I mean, as far as the first 4 episodes, I felt like it was still the weakest. Because I felt like it tied the least amount of things together. And there wasn't really a big resolve.
The most positive thing I can say about this episode, similar to what I've said in the past, I want to buy toys now. I want the Mandalorian toy. I want Gina Carano's figure. I want these things. So, yeah, the most positive thing I can say about the show. Yeah, that's about it. Yeah. All right. Subscribe. Thank you.
Get him, Coop.